Hello, hello, Aderson Oliveira here for the Mindz again, and I have with me Jason Nagy, my good friend. How are you, Jason?
I'm fine, Aderson. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Terrifying, and it will be fun, I'm sure.
It will be fun, and again, we're gonna get through it. Okay, so today we're gonna be talking about The Power of Habit, a book written by Charles Duhigg. Duhigg, yeah, I listened to his name, Charles Duhigg. Uh, I want to start on a very simple note. When I read this book, Jason, I got the impression that all problems in human life, in personal lives, in business lives, they all boil down to habits. That's that's what. Again, I don't know whether or not the author that was a goal of his, but I just got the feeling that this was what he was trying to prove there.
Yeah, I certainly said maybe not all habits. There was some free will that was available and other things, but I think yeah, he was saying this is the root and primal part of your brain that actually your whole mind is trying to get to, is to form these habits to make life easier for all of us, for everything you do.
Perfect. So again, the idea here is that we talk about what we got out of the book, and if I go to the next slide here on my simple slide points, the key aspect here of the book, I would tend to think that it's really what when he talks about the habit loop, which you identify those three elements of the 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 different components of a habit, which is a clue, a routine, and a reward. And again, it really boils down to breaking habits, to identifying habits, creating new habits, and this is the framework that he preaches, that all habits share in common those three elements. Um, on the habit, then again, the idea here is that let's break it down and let's talk a little bit about each one of those key aspects. So the next slide, it's really about the routine. So what is the routine? What can tell me, Jason, about what is the routine?
Well, the routines are everything that you do in life without thinking. I think from the book, one of the ones that stuck with me most was he talked about when you back a car up. It's become routine now once you start driving, because when you first start, you're thinking about, you don't want to hit the curb, you got to watch cars behind you, you got to watch cars in front of you, you're a little nervous, you don't know about your speed. And then as you become experienced and this becomes more of a habit as you're driving, you don't even think about that. You just back up. Of course you're looking for cars and things, but you don't, that's a habit now. So I think that's your brain, again, trying to shortcut things and to say, okay, look, I don't have to overthink this. I know how to do this. Let me do it. That's my habit now. And you do this with many things in life. Sitting down in front of a TV, any good and bad habit. So I think that's what he's referring to through this.
Uh, in his case, the author's case, which is what triggered him to, of course, write the book, he talks about this habit that he has of eating cookies in the afternoon. And that's one of the bad habits that he had. And he tried to break that habit down into smaller chunks, which is the cue, the routine, and the reward. Trying to figure this out and trying to change the routine, which in his case was about going to the cafeteria, buying a cookie, and of course eating it. So that was his routine. That was the bad habit that he wanted to try to break. So again, that's the first component, the routine. What is it that is being done? What is the actual act in the cycle, in the habit? What is the actual what actually takes place? So that's the routine. Now we have the cue. The cue, and I'm gonna give my take here. Jason, you're gonna do that in a second. The cue is how we go about what goes about triggering that routine. And according to the book, there are a few different elements that may be the cue that we use to trigger a habit, to trigger a routine. And he identified 5 most common types of triggers that work as cues for the routine. And I just listed them right there. One of those is, where are you? Maybe it's about a location that you are. Maybe that's the location, that's the place, that's a room, that's I don't know, maybe it's driving through a McDonald's that triggers you to, hey, I want a happy meal for my kids, you know. That's the that's a potential cue. Now, another potential cue is what time is it, you know? In his case, in the author's case, this routine of going to buy this cookie, it usually happened around 3 to 3:30 in the afternoon. So for him, it was about a specific time in the day. Nope. Who else is around? Maybe it's about somebody else that is around you. That's, I don't know, maybe I haven't thought about a very specific example about that one, but maybe it's about, I don't know, being close to, I don't know, your kids or your wife or your coworkers. Maybe that's one cue that will trigger you to do something. Would you have any sample of that, Jason?
Yeah, I think you're hitting on it, Aderson. It's the quite often before I read the book, we would talk about routine, your routine of your day. You know, you get up, you have breakfast, or you don't have breakfast. You go check your emails first thing, or you check your phone. But all those routines are habits forming if you do them over and over again, and they're led off by a cue. And as you said, time of day is a good one. The first thing I get up, I go brush my teeth. You know, I go check emails in the morning. These are the things, time of day is a real strong one for me. Like you said, also location. If you're in a particular location that you always do a certain thing, I can't come up with anything off the top of my head other than perhaps, let's say you, whenever you go to a movie theater, even if you're on a diet or what have you, I think the first thing you do after you buy your ticket is you go buy popcorn, right? So that's a normal cue would be, okay, I have my ticket now, I go buy popcorn. That's the key. So if you also, you know, he talks very much in there about trying to identify these cues, and I think that's one of the key things that people overlook, is trying to identify what your cues are. And that makes it really fascinating when you start to look at what those cues are. That's the fascinating thing about discovering what your habits are, because we do these without even thinking these things on a normal basis. So.
Very true, very true. And the two last points there that he classifies under potential cues is one is how you're feeling now. You know, it might be, again, we might be about, you know, feeling depressed, feeling lonely. That may trigger you to eat. Again, it might be about a feeling as well, and it might be about some sort of action that preceded the routine. And I think I have a good example of that. If you put your alarm clock for you to wake up every day to go jogging, that is the action that preceded the routine. The action is your alarm goes on, you know, goes off or on, I don't know. But so again, that's the action that preceded the routine. So those are 5 categories, I could say, of cues that most people will react to automatically, so they go through the routines. So again, that's a cue.
Yeah, I think just further to that, when you're talking about running, even in the book they mentioned if you want to run, take your shoes and put them right where you'll see them first thing in the morning. That will be your cue that, okay, there are my running shoes, I have to put them on and I have to go for a run. So it's something that can, and as we get through the book, that's what it runs into, is how you can alter your habits and change your habits and work towards that.
You know, it's funny you saying that, because just today in the morning I've identified one habit that is very necessary for me. There's some sort of medicine that I have to take every day, and my cue to that medicine is opening up the drawer of opening up the cabinet when I pick up a glass to drink milk in the morning. That's my cue for that medicine, you know. So again, it's funny that you start to, hey, this is a cue for that habit. And you start to not second guess, but you start to be mindful.
Mindful, very good. Yes. Yeah, very good. Yeah, the one thing that struck me when you talked the overall about habits, and when you have a habit and that you really don't think, your habits are taking over and you're not thinking about the process you're doing, and it makes me really wonder when you're getting on the highway with hundreds or thousands of other cars that no one is thinking. So that's an interesting little thing that scares the heck out of me. But
True, but again, as an autopilot, and again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm no close to understand that. But there is the automated part of your brain, but you are also mindful and aware of what's happening. So you can, that part of your brain that triggers whenever there is danger, that acts very fast as well. So, but again, I'm not an expert on that. So I want to stop right here. Okay, so let's go to the last part of the loop, which is the reward. So the funny thing is that the reward is what you want to feel after you do the routine. It's the routine itself is not the goal. The goal is what you get at the end of that. You know, the goal is in. I'll talk about that in a second, but the goal is about what you're looking for. What again, as brushing your teeth, I'll mention that later. But sometimes the reward is not that obvious, and I'm gonna go back to the author's situation there with the cookie thing. He said that his routine was 3 o'clock. He went to the cafeteria to buy a cookie. Routine. And the reward is that he was feeling good after that, and he was socializing, and he had the cookie, but he could not really pinpoint exactly which one of those aspects was the real reward. Is that because he wanted the sugar rush? Is that because he just needed a break from the work? Is that because he needed to socialize? So he went on his experiment to try to find which one of those different potential rewards was the right one that was driving the entire routine. And he figured out after some experimentations that it was really not the sugar rush, it was not the break so much, but it was about socializing. He needed to socialize. But again, so that's my take here. Jason, anything from your side?
Yeah, I think that's a, you told the story well. The key that I took away from that was that, the reward may not be always what you think it may be. If I have a chocolate bar, I think, okay, I'm it's a treat. I'm getting this, it's going to be this lovely tasting piece of chocolate in my mouth or something. But the reward can be exactly that. It could be something completely different, such as I'm rewarding myself for a hard day's work. This is giving me a break from what I'm working on right now. These are the things that you have to, I think, this is another part, just like the cue side. The reward side is seldom really looked into, I think, from people. And I think it's about the whole thing, the whole book, that message keeps coming through, is that you have to become aware of these things and aware of what your rewards are, aware of what your cues are, so that you're more mindful of your life, basically.
Very good. Okay, so next one here. And then we have the fourth element of breaking a habit. Because again, we're talking here about breaking a habit or breaking a bad habit. We have to have a plan to create a new routine that's based on the same cue and getting the same reward. What can you change here in the routine that will deliver that? And that's what he was able to identify by trying different strategies of, instead of buying a cookie, he went, instead of going to the cafeteria, he thought that it might be just a break, so he went for a walk. That was not enough for him. And then he went, I think that he bought something else instead of a cookie, he tried something else. And that was not enough for him. And then he just, one of those experiments, he just went to somebody's desk, just to chat there. And he identified that, hey, what my break is actually for me to do some gossiping and to do some small talk with my colleagues. So because he identified that, now instead of going to the cafeteria and buying the cookie, he just went by to his colleague's desk and chat for a little bit. That changed, that kept the cue, kept the reward, but changed the bad habit, which was buying the cookie. He was getting fat, he was getting some extra pounds. Now he's not anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very true. That's the overriding piece to this, is to change the habits that you want to change. And I think the one really, one big point that stuck with me in this book is that the habits that you form will always be there. It's the routine you can change. You can change different pieces of it, but you will always have the habit. So what they talked about as they moved through the book was moving from the bad habits and altering them into the good habits, so that it's the same habit, perhaps the same cue, the same reward, but you change the routine like you're talking about, so that habit changes. I think when they were talking about Dungy, the football coach, that's one of his things with the professional football players. He said they all are professional football players. They're all here. They all have habits. What I have to do now is work with those habits to change their bad habits into good ones by showing them specific cues, work on their routines, and then get into the reward of that. So
perfect. Okay, so next one here. Now this is just a simple example of something that I have done, because so far we have discussed about breaking bad habits, identifying the cue, identifying the routine, identifying the reward. But sometimes we just need to develop new habits, So sometimes it's not about breaking old habits or breaking bad habits. Sometimes it's about developing new behavior, developing new habits. So again, when you are looking to develop a new habit, what at least what I got from the book is that try to you set out what you want to achieve. I'll go back to myself and I'll look at myself and I'll give myself an example here. I wanted to have better overall health, and we all know that exercising is part of that. And I said, okay, but then I need to have some sort of reward after exercising, because exercising just for the sake of exercising to have a better health in the long run, it's something so far-fetched and so far away from your immediate needs. You need satisfaction right away. So sometimes you don't go exercising because the satisfaction of sleeping 1 extra hour is much greater than, okay, I'm gonna live a few more years because I'll be running my treadmill. But then what you try to do, and again, don't think that I came up with that before exercising. I rationalized those things. So, but again, I had to analyze that. So my rationalization was that I wanted to feel more energetic. I want to feel more. Uh, I want to have more energy to work through the day, and not to feel dead by the end of the day, the way I used to feel. So again, the energy boost that you find in stamina after you're running, after you're exercising, that was my reward. I mean, consciously or unconsciously, that was my reward, because that's what I kept telling people. Hey, you know that if you run, you're gonna have much more energy, because I'm having more energy. So again, I've identified the reward. What was the cue? My alarm. 6:30 in the morning, I wake up and I know that I need to go there. And the routine was the obvious one, running a treadmill. So again, not only for breaking bad habits, but creating new habits as well. Jason.
Well, yeah, and I think the key there, Aderson, if I can use yours, what you went through, I think you may have found in the beginning there's a bit of excitement with a habit, so it's a little easy at the beginning to sort of get into a new routine, and yes, I'm going to be healthy and everything, or I'm going to get more energy or whatever it may be. But sometimes you tend to, over a bit of time, fall off that. You forget, you don't see the reward as much, or it seems to fade, or like you said, I want that extra hour. It outweighs the reward from the running. So what you have to do is you do have to work at creating a new habit a little bit at the beginning to make sure it really becomes a habit, to really settle in, to make that happen. So
Very true, very true. At the beginning, things will be uncomfortable there. But again, and that's a part of the book that it talks about willpower, and things get a little bit maybe spiritual, maybe a little bit beyond do this and that. So it goes to the willpower and how you can keep yourself motivated during that period that it's not a habit yet. You have to force yourself into. And my last point on my notes here, we'll talk a little bit about that, which is fake it until you make it. But I'm going to get there in a second. So again, new habits, old habits. And then we go to the keystone habits, which is I think that a great point that he makes throughout the book, which is identifying those. And again, this, I'm not saying that those things are easy to be done, but again, what is easy? So keystone habits. Keystone habits are some of those habits that they are so profound that they have trickle-down implications on other habits as well. And again, I don't really like to keep using myself as an example, but I'm gonna use here. See, about 2 years ago, I was about 15 pounds or 16 pounds bigger. I was a bit chubby. But then I just decided, you know what? I'm gonna start eating better. Just that. Just eat a little bit better, and I made some small changes. Because of that, I saw my weight going down a little bit. And after a little bit, I decided, now I'm gonna exercise as well. So again, that simple habit there that I just decided to eat slightly better, it trickled down that, okay, so now I'm exercising as well. And now I'm having a more productive day. And now again, and even, this is what it's called the keystone habits. Now, hard to identify, but nonetheless, it's a fact. Jason.
Yeah, I really like this concept about keystone habits, because I think a lot of people may have experienced them before, even if they haven't read the book, or I hadn't really recognized them as keystone habits. But using, again, exercise and fitness, it is something that if you start something, it leads to a whole bunch of other stuff. When I was training for some marathons and such, yeah, I would have to stick to a running schedule, so that would create a habit, and automatically when I'm training, I eat better. I focus on, eating better. I have more energy, so other habits change. I don't watch as much TV. I don't, all the other things. So just by changing that one particular habit, or keystone habit as he suggests in the book, it can really get you focused on a whole bunch of other things. And I think the keystone habits are the ones that you really want to take a look at your lifestyle and what you're doing and what your habits are, and do a bit of an inventory so that you really can find that keystone habit that may change everything and attempt to change it. And they talk about that in the book with experimentation, to try and experiment with changing different habits and see what other habits get changed. And I think that's good for everybody.
I also liked very much the concept, and I just quickly mentioned here about small wins, and I put that into context of keystone habits, because I think that those, what they call small wins, can be part of a major keystone habit overhaul. And again, I'll go back to the exercise, to the eating better thing. Again, looking back, one of my small wins, I would say, that was to instead of eating my dinner at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, I said, you know what, I'm gonna start eating my dinner at 5 or 6 o'clock. Again, that's something that was a small win, but a lot of small wins, put them together, and they create, a major change. Now, we're not saying that we know everything, guys. Okay, so that's not the idea here. But again, I'm just looking back at certain things that we have done and that have worked. But again, we don't have all the answers here, and you're gonna see that in a second.
Yeah. Well, and there's other parts within the keys. Like let's perhaps get out of the exercising and fitness aspect of things, and into finance, for example. People that want to save for things, the first, the thing they do is they start, if they have a trip or a goal in mind, a reward, they'll build a habit of putting money away for that. And if you do that and pick a reward that's a little closer, those quick wins, you can get into the habit of saving money. And if you get in the habit of saving money, that can save on credit and on a whole bunch of financial implications down the road that really would be a fantastic habit for people to get into, by putting away a little extra money and perhaps even taking the quick win a couple of weeks away. Instead of using a credit card this month, for example, try and use only cash. And what are you going to pay? What are you going to use your money for? So I think that's something that you can build on, and that could be a keystone habit for a whole bunch of other things, because if you save more money, perhaps you'll take more trips, or you'll be more culturally interested in different things, and you'll see different people, and it could be life-changing. So these are powerful things that they talk about in the book. And again, we're not experts, so we have to experiment with this.
Very true. I like the example there, Jason. Okay, so keystone habits. Now, let's go to a part of the book, and I'm talking about the selling products slide, Jason.
Yeah.
Let's go to a part of the book that I can understand, but I find hard to translate that into what I do from a business standpoint. Yeah. Again, when we talk about personal usage of habits and change them, everything is so obvious, exercise and they let's call it a technical term here. The use cases of habits, the examples, the samples, the examples of habits in context to a single person, they are very clear, very easy to understand. Now, when we bring that to the context of selling products or applying those concepts to habits of a company, organization, I mean, I like the stories that he puts in the book. I understand them. However, I have a hard time translating that to, okay, that's great, but how can I use that in my business? So again, guys, that's where I don't have too much of answers here. I have more questions than answers. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Jason will have some answers. But let's see. Here on the slides, and again, this came from the book, not from my head. They're talking about how habits can change consumer behavior, can change, can how companies create products that tries to change people's or to get into people's habits. And the a very interesting story was about selling toothpaste. No, that beginning of the century. Not sure if it's beginning of past century or mid
Yeah, 1900s, in the early 1900s.
early 1900s. After post-war, I think it was post World War.
Just actually, it was just pre-war. Part of the problem was that it was seen, tooth decay was being seen as well as a national threat, because the troops that were being sent over, most people didn't brush their teeth back then. And most people that were sent over, their teeth were bad, and it caused health issues. So that was part of the whole toothpaste movement back in the early 1900s. And you're right. They brought forward. I don't want to steal your thunder. So
Go ahead.
They brought forth this. How do we get people to brush their teeth? How do we change the habit or make a habit about brushing the teeth? And I believe I forget the gentleman's name. Let me see if I got it here. Oh yes, it's Hopkins, who worked with Pepsodent. He came along and he found a reward that was enough to sort of start a habit loop, and that was the feeling of removing a film from your teeth at the end. And if you remember, during the 70s and ish, they had a whole bunch of commercials about the Pepsodent Smile and a whole bunch of other things that were pushing Pepsodent. But it really, at the time, this toothpaste created a sensation on your teeth that felt clean. So they triggered on that, and they said, well, use Pepsodent to remove the film that's on your teeth, and you can feel it after that it's clean. Well, it turned out all toothpaste did this, but Hopkins latched onto it as a marketing mechanism. So people, after they brush their teeth, would run their tongue along their teeth, and that was the reward. So the cue was to brush your teeth, was to get to get to that reward, and they built a habit out of that and sold. It was the best-selling toothpaste for years, apparently, according to the book. Number one selling product in the world. They also ran that into other stories too. That was the whole toothpaste piece.
Yeah, so that's the selling part of the habit loop of selling products, described by Jason. There, exactly what I have placed there on the slide. So again, you have the full routine there. Now, next one here is something that I really like, that analogy, and I'm talking about the wolf in sheep's clothing. Again, I have small kids, and this is so applicable to me in particular. How you can change habits by dressing up the routine into something a little bit healthier, maybe, if we are talking about food, or maybe introducing new kinds of music in between familiar music, or if you introduce new products among more commonly used products. And again, I could go each one giving examples, but honest that I'll go for food. I'll take it food, for instance. The example that I gave in the book is that beginning of the century, they needed in the US people to eat animal organs, and people were not used to that. So the government tried to create recipes that housewives, they could cook meals that would be similar to what people were already accustomed to. So that's where the dressing the unfamiliar organ meat, dressing as familiar, cooking like an old meal, an old known meal, so people could get used to that. Music, the music example, very interesting one. A new kind of music came in. They wanted people to listen. Everything said that music would catch up. It was not catching up. They identified that if they put the familiar music, if they put the unfamiliar music in between two familiar ones, that music that was sounding unfamiliar would eventually become familiar as well.
Yeah.
Products, it's a great example, and a very controversial one. That example of the book is that they wanted to market to pregnant women, but they didn't want to scare them off by letting them know that they knew that they were pregnant. So they put those baby coupons close together with lawnmower coupons or things that would be unrelated to motherhood. So it would not feel creepy for them to be getting that, and it would be, oh, everybody in the neighborhood is getting that same coupons, you know. So it's a nice take from the book as well, you know, dressing the familiar as familiar. Jason, any take there?
Yeah, no, I found this particularly interesting. The concept. I don't think it's new when you talk about food and kids, or learning for kids, for example. People try and inject fun into the process and camouflage it as this is fun and you're learning at the same time. They try that with adults too, as well, to try and make it entertaining to learn. And I agree. I think this is a really powerful concept. That the nice thing that through the book is they did the scientific studies on this to prove it as well. That if you have familiar, at least in the music scenario, if familiar music beforehand and afterhand, that it does make that music work better for people, or become popular. And that particular piece of music won a whole bunch of awards and became the #1 selling, grossing song of all time, and that happens to be Hey Ya by Outkast. But
love that.
Very good, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So that's that one. Now I'm in the next slide here, inside organizations. Again, that's where I have a hard time translating habits into organization, into business. I don't know. Do you have 2 cents there to your 2 cents there to give about that, Jason?
Yeah. I think the one good one from the book, they mentioned Alcoa, the aluminum manufacturing company, and how they brought in a new CEO, and at the time the new CEO focused specifically on safety. Nothing else, not making profits, not making anything. This goes back to the Keystone habits as well. But this is how they managed to change the whole organization into a highly profitable company, many times more than when the CEO had joined. And what they did was by focusing specifically on a key habit within the organization, and that was safety, that led to a whole bunch of other habits through the organization as well. So safety become priority #1, absolutely top. It then filtered down into, okay, what that opened up a communication line, for example, is one example. They said, you know, if you see a safety issue, let us know. And one employee outside of the safety issue figured, okay, this is a safe environment to let my managers know. I have a better idea for how to process this particular type of product. And that filtered up and created a whole new product line for them. So this is how you can change a whole organization, by focusing on some of the habits that are within the organization. Some organizations are you know, have good habits, and some have real toxic ones that you want to get rid of right away. They talked about one of the hospitals in the States that they were nurses could not provide feedback without being chastised by the doctors. And the doctors felt this superiority over the whole process of operating and patient care and everything else. And that hospital too, focused on these particular habits and changed them. And it dramatically changed the service level. It changed people's feeling about working at the place. It became like from a dungeon to an absolute oasis to work in. So these things can really work. I really think large organizations can really benefit from focusing on some of these things.
Very good, very good. Okay, so inside organizations with Jason. Okay, this is my last one. This is my last point here, I think. This part, this is so hidden in the book, I think. It's the end of chapter 10 or 9, and he talks about this very briefly, but, and again, he never mentioned fake it until you make it. I mean, he never mentioned that, but that's my association. That's what I got out of that particular piece there. And he goes back to William James, which is an American philosopher from the beginning of century of last century. That at some point in his life, in his 30s, he felt that he was a failure, and he was reading this thing from this other author, which I don't recall, but bottom line is that he decided that, okay, I have the power of will, I think that my life is not good, I could end it, but instead of ending my life, I'm gonna take the next year to behave as everything was okay, as everything was good, as everything was positive, as everything is fine. And he forced himself into behaving like that. And he made it, because after that, he really internalized what he was forcing himself into, and it became part of his habits. And again, he mentioned that very briefly in the book. I think that you can link this learning to fake it until you make it. You know, fake it until you make it, it's a bit rough, it's a bit, it's not polished. But I really think that's one of the good takes, at least from me, on the book, is that, okay, you're not familiar with this. It's a habit that you want to create. So initially, you have to fake that you are like that. You have to fake that you are an athlete, that you have to fake that you want to eat better. At some point, that faking aspect will fade away, and it will become internalized and part of what you do. That's my take from the book.
Yeah, and that's the fake it until you make it sort of mantra is certainly something that's out in business world. A lot of people have touted that. The one along the same lines, the one major thing that hit me, and this was late in the book too, I think page 273, so I'm going to quote right from the book, says, the way we habitually think of our surroundings and ourselves create the world each of us inhabit. And I think that's the same thing. We have to think and believe. Belief was a real big part throughout the book too. You have to believe that these things can change. So believing the end result is the fake it till you make it scenario, right? You believe, and believing can take you a long way into a lot of different stuff. Because if you believe and then it turns into action, and your actions then create a routine, and then you're doing this without even thinking, and that changes a lot of stuff. So it's very encouraging message for a lot of people that maybe want to change their business, their life, whatever it may be. So I thought it was really quite a good book.
Perfect. That's also my opinion. Again, a lot of stuff that you can bring to your personal life. Some stuff will trickle down to business as well. I love the book. I would read it again. I would highly recommend. That's it from my side. Jason, any final words there from you?
Let me check one real quick. No, I think we touched on a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things in this book that I found interesting that we just surfaced on. I think you can really dive deep into it again. It is a book I've read twice now. I would probably read it again because there's so much there. And but I'm going to try and implement some of these habit-changing scenarios. Oh, the one thing, yes, they actually, in the back of the book, they have a framework for change. And this is what he suggests that it's on page 288. Again, I'll just read you there's 4 points. It's identify the routine, experiment with the rewards, and that was a big thing, is experimentation, because you may not always get it the first time. And then isolate the cue, so depending, figure out what your cue really is, and then have a plan, right? We talked about those things throughout the whole piece, but that sort of wraps it up and gives you some action that you can start taking. So good luck.
Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Aderson. Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye.